Hi, okay, so today's video is going to be on photosynthesis. I won't go into the mechanics of every part of photosynthesis, but I'll give you sort of a high-level review of what it means. So right here we have a chloroplast, just so we get things straight. This is the stroma, so the space there is in this organelle. This group of things is the grana, and these individual things here are the thylakoids, and these are really important. Okay, so as we begin, it's important to understand there are two main parts of photosynthesis. So the light dependent reaction and the light independent reaction. I highly recommend watching Sal's video on both these things, especially on the Calvin cycle, which we'll talk about later. But in his videos, he extensively makes a case, and it's really important to remember that both the light-dependent and light-independent reactions happens when there's light. Just that light-independent reactions don't need light, but they still happen only when there is light. Yeah. So there you go. So these light-dependent reaction happens on the membrane of these thylakoids, while the light-independent happen in the space that's here. So, so what happens during the light-dependent reaction that occurs? Remember, here, I'll take blue. That occurs here on this membrane. We have what's called an electron transport chain, which I again recommend watching Sal's video on that as well, which is insanely fascinating when you think about sort of having, in essence, having this turbine on the membrane of cells. It's a mechanical process going on, this very, very small scale. Anyways, it blows my mind. But yeah, definitely recommend you read more on that. So what happens there is, through this electron transport chain and the ATP synthase here that's associated with the electron transport chain. So here, what gets created directly from light, we get ATP, which, as you know, adenosine triphosphate is energy. Now, you'd expect this to complete, right? We have energy, but the plant needs to convert that energy, that ATP energy, into something it can use better. For some function, it could still use ATP, but it mostly needs sugar or pGal or G3P. I'll use pGal, but there you go. pGal. So essentially, the analogy is if I gave you a bar of coal to recharge your iPod, right? It wouldn't work. So it's still energy, but we need to convert it to something that's useful. In the case of a plant, sugar. And that happens, like I said before, in the stroma, the space that's in these chloroplasts here. So, the light-independent reactions, like I said at the beginning, I won't go in. So what happens here is the Calvin cycle. I won't go into detail in that because mostly I'm never able to remember it properly, so I read the book before an exam and then I forget it. So it's a fairly complicated process. It's not something that's intuitive to remember. So I'll give you a higher level overview. The Calvin cycle essentially takes ATP, takes a massive amount of ATP, takes a lot. This is it's very important to realize that, and then converts it to pGal. And once again, this doesn't need light at all. Yeah, exactly. So if you've read a bit on cellular respiration, you most probably know the Calvin cycle as well, which has nothing to do with photosynthesis. It's important to realize the distinction here. The Calvin cycle creates ATP or helps in creating ATP, while the Calvin cycle takes ATP to convert it to something else that's more useful to the plant. So there you go. I hope that helps. I hope that helps. It's a good review. So remember, title code here, the membrane here. It's a light-dependent reaction. Picture that turbine here, the electron transport chain, which it's ATP synthase, creating ATP. The heavy lifting is done here, essentially, if you want. And then the Calvin cycle, or the light-independent reactions, which are essentially synonymous, but not really, create the end result of sugar for the